Now we come to second discussion round on Tim Shaw's breakdown clown and artificial intelligence. Dear Mr. Gephart, please take over.
Thank you very much indeed. First of all, I have to say, Tim Shaw, he is really present. So we haven't seen him for a while at our center. The screen makes it possible to see you, and seem to be in good shape. That's my impression, at least. Wonderful. So in order to present Tim Shaw, who is an RR. Do you know what an RR is? A member of the Royal Academy. Not everybody is part of the royal family, Royal Academy less, and so on. And some of the royals are not members of the Royal Academy also. Or are they necessarily members? I don't think so. So, born in Belfast, he's a sculptor and contemporary visual artist. He's playing with everything. You give him some material in there, and he's doing some artistic work. He can't help to do that. He studied first at Manchester Polytechnic and then at Falmouth School of Art, where he's still attached to. He received all the honors that is necessary. And then most recently, he made a major public solo exhibition, Black Smoke Rising. He toured to Birmingham and Aberystwyth Arts Centre during 2014. His work featured in Reflections of War, and this is interesting at the very moment, because a lot of people say, oh, the cultural people didn't care about the war anymore. This is not true, at least for Tim Shaw, who was always fascinated, I think in a very negative way, by the facts and the horrors of the war. Seems to be rather important, as you will see. So this continues with a lot of great works about shock and contemporary artists at war and peace at the Royal West of England Academy. Finally, Tim Shaw has undertaken a number of public commissions, including the rites of Dionysos, dans l'ombre de Dionysos, as Michel Maffezoli has called it, for the Eden Project, the Minotaur for the Royal Opera House, also an important work as far as I think, the drummer in Truro City Centre. A more political side to his work became evident in a number of sculptures responding to issues such as terrorism and the war in Iraq, such as Tank on Fire. Very impressive, with elements of oil, everything that is part of the story. Awarded the Selector's Choice Thread Needle Prize in 2008 and the installation Casting a Dark Democracy. Tim Shaw has been supported by the Kapatos Gallery in Athens, the Kenneth Armitage Foundation, British School of Athens, and the Delphina Studio Trust through residencies in Greece and Spain and a fellowship in London. But in 2013, he was elected to the Royal Academy and was elected a fellow to the Royal British Society of Sculptors and a fellow of Falmouth University. But the most important step, I think, in his whole career has been from April 2015 to March 2016. Tim has been an active artist in residence at the Käte Hamburger Center for Advanced Study in the Humanities, Law and Culture, where he received the Georg Simmel Artist Stipend for his work on the topic, The Birth of Breakdown Clown. And I must continue with a small narrative as introduction. And he was, and I must confess, he was even boring in this function. You must imagine, we sit around a table of fellows. We have a discussion about very deep and sophisticated, refined questions. What is the concept of law? Unfortunately, I think our ethnologist had not been with us, and we were just in the air, and it was wonderful. We felt very comfortable. And then he simply said, yes, Werner, and to others, the same question. Said, I'm not a lawyer, I didn't study the law, but please explain me, what do you understand by law? You can imagine. So the most simple questions are the most heavy ones to be answered. And this was something he practiced in a very bold, not a really challenging way. So you have understood the irony and the sympathy for this kind of questioning. Many artists don't like to talk about their art. Do you like to talk about your art, dear Tim, in order to see how art may irritate, be an irritation for those crazy people who do science, humanities, etc.?
I do from time to time, but obviously, you know, much of my work and thinking it takes place in the studio with the interaction of the work. But yeah, I suppose I'd like to just say, yeah, I did write a report and about my time at the Käte Hamburger Institute, a colleague, and you know, I thought it was, you know, one of the most educationally informing and thought-provoking and inspiring experiences of my career. You know, to exchange and debate ideas and listen to high caliber lectures delivered by scholars from around the world was a unique and great privilege. And you know, I'm sure most of you know that what was created there was a robotic project entitled The Birth of Breakdown Clown, which actually recently has, for the first time, been exhibited in the UK, but it actually did go on to be exhibited at San Diego Museum of Art in America, where it got major exposure, and a lot of people came to see the show, which it was part of, and I got the chance to see it in a museum. By that stage, it had developed from being a monologue piece in which it would give speeches. The first it gave at your center. Yeah, so it was out in America at San Diego Museum of Art, and what was very interesting, I developed a sort of artificial awareness for the clown, in which the robot could see everybody in the room and could pick out one person that would stand in front of it, and there would be a response, dialogues to the clown would ask questions or give comments. But I kind of structured it at that time around the wall that Trump was building and immigration. And on the first night, in fact, the very first showing of Breakdown Clown in the museum in America, it managed to annoy half the audience and send them out of the room, which I thought it was a great achievement, when it talked about getting into America without a passport, and had mentioned that all the people in the room that America had been built on immigration. And then a member of the audience started shouting at the robot, telling the robot that I think her words were, yeah, legal immigration. And then half the audience walked out of the room. And but apart from that, it was all a very positive experience. And you know, I think the centre should be very proud that it was able to facilitate such a creation that will have a lifespan for many years, because it is my intention for it to be shown one day in somewhere like St. Paul's Cathedral, giving monologues about spirits and so on and so forth, and dialogue as well. So there we go.
So thank you very much for that description. I remember very well the growth of Breakdown Clown. First, you must know how Tim is doing sculptures. If he's representing the people, bodies especially, he's working with wool and with all kinds of materials, and so it's overthrown over a metal, ein metallisches Gerüst, wird es sukzessive aufgebaut, und die Materialien, the material has a very specific aesthetic quality, and it evolves, and then in the end it had changed to become no longer this clown-like figure, but became a more serious clown. And what Breakdown meant in this context, and especially what it meant with regard to all those figures that we know from the court, not courtrooms, but from the courts, als die Hofnarren, as we say in German. So he became a kind of figure, a critical figure, sometimes seemingly to be a little bit ridiculous, and he was so kind even to program a poetry about the center law as culture that could certainly will still exist. So it would be really very important and interesting to have a look at it at St. Paul's Cathedral. Would be fine. The question at the time, and we had invited a specialist in artificial intelligence, you might remember Tim Shaw, if it had foreseen a discussion that we have nowadays, even much more intense, in the way that we want to know what is the role of artificial intelligence in this context, not whether it's possible or not, but whether it will overwhelm by way of new algorithms, the internet, etc., and will, so to say, suffocate our individual creativities. And so was this also in your mind when you created this figure, or was it just the fact to make him speak and to make him respond, to make him act as if he would be a human being? Or how much is he, or still a human being for yourself, Tim?
Well, I think the original idea was that that it would have dialogue with people, that there would be conversation, but I mean, it's quite an intense operation creating a robot, and especially when you're doing it without any knowledge or any past experience. So everything was a learning curve, right down to how you move an arm, how do you synthesize sculpted form with robotic form, and every day it was an intense learning curve. So when you've made the robot move and everything, you have to think about, well, if it's going to speak, what does it speak? How does it speak? What does it say? Before you get on maybe to conversation. And, it took a while, to get it to, from monologue to dialogue, and to create something similar to an artificially intelligent stem, whereby dialogue would happen between robot and an audience or person in front of it. But I think that part of the function of making it artificially intelligent, and it's very basic, is really to bring about awareness that I think I said in my original brief that I was astonished at how quickly humanity has depended upon digital technology. And I mean, I know you could draw the line long before the year 2000, but from 2000 onwards, it seems to be a very different world to maybe to the year 2000 and before. And I think the breakdown clown is maybe asking this question, or making some sort of reflection on the fact that we've got this far, or we've got that far without artificial intelligence, but also it's important not to walk into a world blindfolded, whereby we totally depend upon digital technology, and we live in a world where machines tell us what to think and do. And it does seem to be, certainly it's something that I've observed, that the power of the algorithm has become more and more important as the years progress. In fact, to a point where I think it is beginning to shape the very nature of what we are. And I think that the more that we depend upon digital mechanics, the more dangerous the world will perhaps be. Although, having said that, I think it's a very dangerous world right now.
Well, yeah, I see the point. And this means it is a critical comment on the human condition in times of artificial intelligence and other digital processes that surround us. May I ask a further question? I hear you just came back from the Royal Academy. I suppose you provided a piece for the famous summer exhibition that we are waiting for, and I hope to find the time to travel over the channel and to be there and to celebrate what would be celebrated and will be celebrated from your part.
Well, the show is entitled Climate, and
yeah,
I'm showing a few pieces that are about, I guess, relates back to rituals that come from a time of when we live very much by the mercy of the seasons. And I think that these works, which includes a film and an effigy burning, reflect upon the fact that, even in a digital age, where much of what is demanded is works at the press of a button and lands at our doorstep the following day, it reminds us that we very much remain at the mercy of nature. And certainly the last few years have really reminded us of that. But I've also made a piece that responds to Russia's illegal invasion into the Ukraine, and it's a large sack wall hanging. I don't know if you know what the material sacking is. It's just like a very rough material in which coal used to be contained in.
Yes.
And it's been burnt. The work is entitled Z, and I'm sure you're very aware of the letter Z that has been painted on the tanks and helicopters of many, probably most of the Russian tanks. And obviously we don't quite know the cryptic meaning of it, but in many ways we do, because it's a symbol, isn't it? It's a symbol to unify the troops to a common end. And this piece it's a written piece. It's just got the letter Z in white chalk painted on to quite a large area of canvas, of sacking, sorry. And then in the middle, the letters murder, and it addresses the theme of climate, which the other words, in a climate changed world, there is no longer any place for dictators who wage war and threaten annihilation. And then at the bottom, are the words motherlands in question mark, and the words follow it, Mother Earth first, which is really saying that there is no place now for imperialist conquests in an ever shrinking climate changed world. We can no longer think in these ways. World leaders can no longer think in these ways, and dictators, and really, they have to disappear.
Thank you. You make us very curious to see this kind of installation, and it seems to become very impressive. And I really want to realize a real view to this work. There will be a lot of questions in this circle around. We still have some time, I would say, for some questions at least, in order then to go to the second element of this part, where we try at least to bring art and law more closely together, also in order to reflect what could be done better. For example, the last work you were describing could be an element or a part of the new Center for Advanced Study, or a type of new Center for Advanced Study, if it would focus for a time at least on climate change. And there is a big interest in including artists in residence. That's not a promise that it will be exactly you in 2 years or whatever, but if it goes in this direction, I could imagine that this type of artwork could be important. And please let me make a second very short comment. I see on my screen you are close or in vicinity to Peter Goodrich, and I have just to tell you a little anecdote. Do you allow that, or is it not? You know what I will tell Tim, because he said to me, having listened to Peter Goodrich during our conference, Abstraction in Law and in the Arts, he said to me, so if he, Peter, will behave in court like he did in the Kunstmuseum Bonn, then the case I will accuse to be a murder, he will be my attorney. So just to give you an impression what kind of talks and interactions Tim and I had. And there is no, of course, silence about the person we had in mind. Now, we are very peaceful persons, you and me as well. Questions with regard to Tim Shaw, his work, his current work, his future work, please go ahead. 2 or 3 questions, and then we go to the next panel, please.
I have a small question.
Yes.
Hello, Tim. I hope you are doing well. A small question. Does the clown tell the truth?
Does the clown
tell the truth?
That's a very big question. Does it tell the truth? Well, I think it tries to, in the monologue, let's say in the monologue that was played at, that was performed at the Centre back in 2016, I would say that it kind of reflects the truth, or reflects an idea of the truth. And it's, if you remember, it did reflect upon, what was the nature of our existence, trying to get to grips with ideas of what we may define as spirit, and it's also, if you remember, there was a paragraph in there where it's reflected upon the question of what is the spirit of the law. And I did ask quite a few of you, what did you think, what does the law mean? And many of you responded. And in that paragraph, it really reflects upon your responses, and many of the things that the lectures that were given, the debates, the talks, and so it's more reflective, I think. And for example, when I went to visit ZKM, I asked Peter Weibel, what is the law? And he said directly, straight away to me, law is the anesthesia, the anesthetic that gives the illusion of justice. And I've just also, in my notes here, I'll just read out maybe one thing that I wrote down during lectures and conversations that struck me as interesting. The law affects every dimension of our existence and society, the seen and the unseen, the formed and the abstract. Perhaps what is more appropriate to ask, if anything, what escapes the letter of the law? And because I started to think that, through my experience at the center, I looked around the room in a way that I'd never looked before, and seen that everything in the room, everything that we do, is shaped by the law. So I think back to your question, perhaps it's more reflective. Maybe it reflects certain truths. That's what the breakdown clown is about.
Raja, ta question, s'il te plaît.
Yes. Well, Tim, first of all, hello. I'm so glad to see you again after some years, and thank you to be with us today. I have a question with regard to what you mentioned before about digital life and intelligence, and our life more and more online, also because of the pandemic of COVID-19 and so on. And my question is the following one. I remember now a very good book published some months ago by a French philosopher and psychoanalyst, Cynthia Fleury, her name, about ressentiment. And more, we are leaving our frustrations and resentment in our corners, and with our iPhone, iPad, and the communication or the expression of this kind of emotion is more and more online in the digital way and not in the real life. And this is, of course, linked to violence. And because I know that the topic of violence, of war, is really in the center of your reflections as an artist and in your work, how do you see this? How do you see the future, perhaps, with this tendency, which is I would say just in 2 years of with COVID-19, we have real problem. Perhaps the pandemic made this kind of communication now faster as we imagined perhaps before. How do you see this?
Yeah, the last couple of years it's been quite interesting, hasn't it, with social media? And I think that, well, it's been said before, I think people have become polarized and belong to one camp or the other. And I think things get said in social media. Conflict breaks out in a way that it probably wouldn't break out face to face, round a table with food and drink, where there would be an exchange. I sort of wonder, how much real exchange does go on in social media. I also question the level of humanity on it too. But we're working through machines, and I guess it's the best that we have at the moment in times of pandemic. But I think we have to be very wary of not losing, the actual face-to-face discussions that go on. I would hate for us to go to enter into a world where we just we end up in our little cells, talking, dialoguing, eating, breathing through the machine. There is an interesting book that was written by E.M. Foster, The Machine Stops, of precisely that world. It was written in the 1930s, and the machine starts to break down, and so does humanity. And very interesting book to read. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not.
Perhaps something else. How did you live this phase of lockdown during the pandemic? Was it difficult for your inspiration as an artist? This lack of direct communication with people face to face, as you said?
No, because I kind of worked a couple of years ahead in my own head. So where I live in a very rural area. My studios are in a rural area. Nature's always around, and I've never been a big one for having lots and lots of people around me. So it wasn't problematic in that respect. But I think that the pandemic has definitely altered the human psyche in some way, and we'll see, and that together with the digital age in which we live, it'll be interesting to see in another couple of years' time when we look back to see whether we recover to a place before the pandemic, or whether it's altered us I can't say it, forever. But I want to just say, Raja, that I remember writing here in my report that the lecture that you gave, 3 cultures that examines convivencia, that fed into the dialogue with the robot, and with an important question that really arose from your lecture is how does the self regard the other? And that's a very open question, but it's something that was deeply ingrained in my thoughts, and certainly is repeated by Breakdown Clown, and will be so every time it gets shown. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I asked you this because I know when you was in Bonn, you were rather not an artist who is always in his atelier, or you are really with us, as Werner mentioned, in our fellow meetings. We shared also a lot of other moments, forum, and even nice things together with other fellows in an informal way. So that's why sociability is something important for you, I guess, and that's why I asked you the question. But thank you very much. Thank you, Tim.
Please go ahead, Sabine.
Well, thank you very much. And Tim, it's wonderful to see you. And actually,
see you.
I were at the colleague at the same time, and it was a for me a major privilege to talk to him, because usually I, as a scholar, analyze people's artwork, literary fiction art, without speaking necessarily to the artist. And I think you, Tim, you produce art without necessarily always talking to those engaging with your art. So I was wondering whether, I mean, this conversation with you has certainly changed the way I, treat materials. So I was wondering whether your stay at the College and your deep engagement with like scholars working with your art or other art has changed the way you now and these days engage with scholarship, or has it changed the way you work in any way? So this is sort of my question.
I would say that one thing I would say is that when I got back to England, ever since really, I think I was very spoiled at the centre because, as I said, it was probably the most educationally informing and deeply inspiring time in which you were forced to listen to other scholars and debates and just exchange ideas. And of course, you leave that, and there's never been anything like it since, really. I, like many artists, our life just sort of carries on in the studio. Yes, of course, you have ideas that you put into form and all of that, but right beside me here, I've got a stack of notes from that time, and subsequently I don't have many notes. So I guess one thing that it has changed within the way that I work is that I probably question the philosophical side of what I produce a lot more thoroughly and deeply, let's say. So I hold that period of my fellowship at the centre as a sort of a high bar, which you carry on making work and carry on questioning the validity of and the relevance of what is done.
So thank you very much, both of you. So I think we should now make a certain cut and prepare ourselves mentally to the next round table.